Welcome everyone. This is the second episode of three videos that discuss Jacinda Ardern imposter syndrome. Today I will describe how it affected her policies. But before we dive into that discussion, I'd like to refer back to the first video in which I said that she had an easy career start. In the description below I provide a link to a staff article which outlines how her family connections got her first job in the parliamentary service and how she could establish a network within the Labour Party. It is insightful. The second thing I need to mention concerning the first video is that it is crucial that I described how incapable she was to deal with people over which she didn't have authority. She couldn't discuss issues with them, and this makes it impossible to believe that she was leading with kindness, because these were the situations in which she could have used only her logical reasoning, or soft power, as the literature would say, or kindness. But it never happened. And in situation where she did have authority over people, in those situations kindness cannot work, because people always react to the authority, not the kindness. It's a commonplace that everyone laughs at the jokes of the boss because they react to the authority, not to the joke. So unfortunately, her flagship policy, leadership with kindness, was not real. I had to debunk this, and now let's go into the discussion. First, I mention the positive sides of the imposter syndrome. There are positives as well, not just negatives. In the first video I already talked about how hardworking she was, and it is a general feature of these people. They do put a lot of effort into their jobs, into their works, so they are reliable in this respect. Second, they are smart, they are talented. They are the ingenious people who are the inventors, either in technological solutions or social progress. So they are the ones who are pushing the limits, either themselves and the society. And it is not a coincidence that Jacinda Ardern attempted to become a transformational leader. Yeah, it comes from her talent. So it is a credible thing for her. Thirdly, to discuss the negative aspects of the imposter syndrome, I'd like to talk shortly about how it might develop. And it is one of the psychological problems which are no one's fault. It is the tragedy. Because when I attempted to think through how it might evolve, I came to the conclusion that practically these talented, smart, young, creative people, they likely surprise their parents, and in their surprise the parents cannot react consistently, and the inconsistent emotional reactions disorient the children, so they tend to seek either emotional security and also security for their intellectual capacities. That's what creates the negative behavior patterns of the imposters. As far as I understand it, I know quite many people who have this problem, and practically all of them complained about how their fathers didn't acknowledge their talent. And it seems there must be at least two contributing factors that create this condition. And in case of Jacinda Ardern, it is likely that the job of her father contributed to this problem as well. Policemen are required to act quickly in various situations. And King George, one of the contributors to the channel, warned me that because policemen had to react confidently and quickly, it creates a pressure for them, so that they have to think that the first thought that comes to their mind is the right one in every situation. And it is very difficult to convince a policeman that something is different than they think it is. And this could have been a problem, and honestly, it requires a hero or inhuman efforts for a person who is pressured to react and think quickly to separate the job environment and their private lives. No one can expect that. And this might have created an environment for Jacinda Ardern where she didn't feel that her talent was acknowledged by her parents. This is the tragic situation of it. So whenever an emotional imbalance occurs in a person, unfortunately it can characterize the person almost fully, because the people attempt to balance out this emotional discomfort, and these efforts create the negative behavior patterns. Now, what are these? First of all, the intellectual security. These people, I don't think they can admit when they are not right or they are wrong. And it was apparent with Jacinda Ardern. Jane Clifton wrote a column in March 2022 in the Herald, in which she asked why was it so hard for the Prime Minister to admit that there was a cost of living crisis. And the answer is the imposter syndrome. It is almost a suicide attack for the imposter to admit that they are wrong, because they feel annihilated. And it's not an easy thing to overcome. This is the first part. Many journalists were also frustrated by this, because, for example, Ryan Bridge mentioned often in the AM show that whenever he asked a straightforward question from the Prime Minister, he couldn't get an answer. And yeah, unfortunately this was a very often used tactic by Ardern to talk around the topics. So eventually she arrived to an angle in which she could say something what was right, but altogether she didn't respond to the problem. Let me give you some examples. Once she was asked by Jack Tame why the government couldn't deliver enough affordable homes in 5 years, and her response was that yes, they were ambitious, but was the interviewer asking them to shy away from ambition? Of course, no one was asking for that, but it just happened. And another example for this, when the Gaurav Sharma fiasco occurred in August 2022, another reporter from the AM show, Melissa Chan Green, asked when she came to know about Gaurav Sharma's complaints, and she responded that she came aware of that in December 2021. Now, Gaurav Sharma built up the case thoroughly, and he contacted the Prime Minister's office in December 2021. It is the way how people should contact the Prime Minister. He wrote an email. But, Jacinda Ardern's staff informed her about the email. But in the interview, Jacinda Ardern mentioned that Gaurav Sharma didn't come to her directly. Now, what did she refer to by that? Even the interviewer was confused why that angle was important, because Gaurav Sharma contacted her directly, actually, through her office. So it was something out of the blue. No one could understand why the Prime Minister mentioned that. Anyway, not admitting that they are wrong or they are mistaken happened many times, even with experts. I know academics who wrote her emails about various policy issues, but she didn't come back to them. And in the end of 2021, when Auckland had a Delta outbreak, and per capita there were more infected people in Auckland than in other countries in the world, it was then when the borders could have opened up the first time. And Epidemiologists wrote a column about the inconsistency with the managed isolation and quarantine requirements at the borders. And they argued that it was no longer useful. And she didn't admit it was a problem. She stood by her decision, and the MIQ continued. It created quite a negative reaction from the population as well. Or we can also mention the complaints of the nurses in 2022. They wanted some security, they wanted residency in New Zealand, and the government just didn't intend to modify the immigration settings so that nurses could have some security about their future. I link the articles below in the description. Now, this is just the first layer of the intellectual security for these people, how they tend to overcome their own lack of confidence. There is another shield which develops because they are overperformers, they are overachievers, and because in their memories they already have experience when they outclassed many people, they tend to look down on people. And there were cases about this. I link one example, a short video in the description, in which a journalist attempted to ask whether it was useful to use bleach, as Donald Trump suggested, or not. And okay, it was a dumb question, but journalists attempted to defend why they asked this question, because they just wanted an official response for this. And one of the journalists, Tova O'Brien, started a question, "It is worth asking," and the Prime Minister interrupted with a tone in her voice like, "Is it?" So this showed disrespect for the journalist. It didn't come out right. Another shield is pushing social boundaries in a disrespectful way. Now, I can mention that sometimes these behaviors annoy people. For example, in October 2022, Jacinda Ardern flew to Antarctica and she brought her fiance with her. And no one understood why that occurred. Maybe they just believed it was an entitlement for them. No one knows, but it was problematic, that's for sure. Also, when they attempted to arrange their own weddings, the restaurant owner felt that dealing with the couple was insulting. Now, pushing the social norms and social boundaries is related to another problem, namely imposters tend to hate bureaucratic obstacles, and they tend to neglect and ignore them. One interesting example occurred when in 2020 the government attempted to implement a 20% salary reduction for public officials to show compassion with the people in need who couldn't go to work and couldn't have relevant income. And they thought through all the details about it. They thought about that they shouldn't give it to charity purposes because that would show political bias, and it was safer just to reduce their salaries. And what they didn't think through was how the bureaucratic processes should work to implement it. And the remuneration authority couldn't implement it for more than 3 months. Jacinda Ardern herself acknowledged that yes, she was frustrated by this slow and long process. Yeah, that happened. Now, the larger problem was when she didn't fulfill fully her public responsibilities. Radio reporter Mike Hosking mentioned in March 2021, when the Prime Minister cancelled her regular slots in the radio, that he had noticed that he had read more government documents than the Prime Minister. Maybe she wasn't that hardworking after all. And this became apparent for people who watched the political developments of the Three Waters legislation. In November 2022, it was obvious that the Labour caucus, before voted for the bill, they didn't read through the reports and the bill itself, what it included, including the Prime Minister. And it was very awkward. The Prime Minister just said they made a mistake collectively as a team and they will correct it as a team. What happened? No one knows. Now, another problem with this layer is these people can become self-righteous. And I just want to mention one example concerning this problem. Her resignation. When she resigned, she also set out the date of the election. Why? It should be the responsibility of the incoming Prime Minister, her successor. Why did she set the date? The only reason why it is possible to accept was that she also wanted to set the time when she could leave Parliament. And she leaves on 14th of April, so there is no need for a by-election. Okay, Michael Laws on the platform pointed this out, that it was quite selfish. It was good for her and for her only, and she didn't think about her constituents who will remain unrepresented for half a year. Okay, moving on. Imposter syndrome also creates a need for emotional security. Now, this is the one that is more problematic than the intellectual security, because this creates situations with unhealthy codependence. What I mean, she attempted to present herself as the mother of the nation. Heather Duplessis-Allen pointed this out in a column at Newstalk ZB, that Jacinda Ardern used storyteller style. She was patronizing the people, and this kind of tonation irked some part of the population. And Heather du Plessis-Allen argued that the public didn't want a storyteller, they wanted competent politicians and competent speakers. But this wasn't a real problem. A larger problem emerged when she attempted to empower the alleged victims of unfair social conditions. She attempted to empower women and Maori. The co-governance agenda is very problematic. I will discuss that later on, why it is problematic to provide 50% decision rights to a population that constructs 17% only. Concerning empowering females, well, she achieved something. Now more than 50% of the parliament is made up by females, by women. How? Yeah, Labour was very popular in 2020, and most of the electorate MPs and the list MPs were women. That's how the proportion of females in parliament went beyond 50%. It's not a real achievement. Are they the best to represent the people? Okay. Now, the largest problem, however, is the welfare and social policies. In the interview excerpts I showed in the first video of this series, she talked about how important it was for her that she got grateful emails from women who had children, because their family package helped one of the women to enroll her child for guitar lessons. Now, the child-related supports in the welfare system are very, very generous. In 2019, there was a government committee, the Welfare Expert Advisory Group, and they recommended to increase the various benefits paid by the government. And the child-related supports were recommended to be raised as well. But it is the funny part, or the strange part. This committee specifically recommended not to raise the child-related supports through the benefit, but more through the tax credits, the family supporting tax credits, because if the benefits were raised very high, that would disincentivize people from getting jobs or partner. And what happened was, the government did increase the family tax credits to the level of what the committee recommended by 2022, and they increased the main benefit even higher than it was recommended. Including inflation, it became much higher. The problems are arising already, because these women complain that when they partner, the benefits cuts off. Of course, they created distorted incentives in the benefit system. For example, if a 17-year-old young teenager decides to have baby, it's possible, yes. By the age of 20, the baby is not yet 3-year-old. So the Good Start family tax credit is still granted for the beneficiary. This means that a single parent at the age of 20, without working any minute, on average they can get more than $800 a week. The net median income is about $860. And it's very odd to see how having children creates this kind of distorted benefits. Yeah, they are reliant on the state. Is it a really good policy? Are they grateful for Jacinda? Probably. But it's gonna be a problem long term, because these children see the pattern that their parents can live without work. So, and I believe this can be derived from Jacinda Ardern's imposter syndrome. This is for today. The good news is I believe it is possible to overcome this problem, but it is not possible to overcome it before the age of 45-50. It is just simple. These people are successful in their early lives and they do not face obstacles which would stop them earlier. I will talk about the possible solutions for Jacinda Ardern in the next video. Thank you for watching and see you in the next one.